Hello there everyone, and welcome to the Craft Your Life Project Kit A Delicate Garden video. So in this kit you can see that we do have a stamp set, a die set, and also a simple colouring stencil and 3D embossing folder. To start with, we have a 6x8 stamp set which includes 3 large images in a number of different sentiments too. Inside the packaging we do have the layering guide, so you can use the stamp and also the simple colouring stencil together. To cut out all of the images that we have on the stamp set, we also have the coordinating die set. This is the coordinating simple colouring stencil. In here we have 6 6x6 stencils which coordinate with various different layers on the flower clusters on the stamp set, and also the 3D embossing folder which you can see here. So to start with, I've taken a piece of white cardstock and I have stamped all of the images from the stamp set onto it just using some obsidian black ink. Once that's done, I am going to take the first stencil from the simple colouring stencil set, and I'm just popping that into place around the large rose image that you can see here. For this layer here, I will be using the Coral Bliss ink, and I'm using a small blending tool to add the ink through the stencil onto the image below. Once that's done, I can just shift this stencil over, again popping this into place, making sure that all of these shaded areas that we're going to add in are within the stamped outlines. For this layer here, I will be using the Heart Bee ink, and again I'm using a mini blending tool for this, but you could use a larger blending tool if you find that that's easier for you, or would you like to speed up the process of the blending. So once that has been done and I have added all of the ink through the open spaces of that part of the stencil, all I'm going to do then is I'm just going to shift that stencil up again, and this is just going to add in some really dark shaded areas just to the center of that rose and to the base of some of the larger petals. And I'm just using the Vineyard Berry to do that there. Once that's done, I can move on to the second stencil. So on this one, we have the leaves for the same image that we've been doing before. So for the base of these leaves here, I will be using the Marshland ink. And again, I'm just using a mini blending tool to add the ink through the stencil there. I am adding more ink to the base rather than the tip of the leaves to give me that variant look there. I'm just going to shift the stencil over, and again, I'm going to add the kind of shaded areas. This time I'm going to go with the Sea Forest ink to add those through there. Once that's done, I can move that stencil down, and this is just going to add in the small little bud pieces to the flowers. And for this layer here, I will be using the mangrove root. Once that's done, I'm just going to shift the stencil over, and I'm just going to line up the little flowers that we have on the stencil. And I'm going to be using the chamomile ink for that. There's 2 smaller ones right above that, and I'm just going to move those into place again with the chamomile ink. Once that's done, we can add in the little details to these ones. I'm just going to move that into place and use the Snapdragon ink for that one. Once that's done, I'm going to move on to stencil number 3, and I'm just going to line up the flower petals that we have for the base. And I'm going to be using the chamomile ink to add the ink to these ones. Once that's done, I'm just going to shift the stencil over and just line up the rest of the petals. It's going to add the darker shading to kind of the center of all of these beautiful flowers that we have here. And I will be using the Snapdragon ink to add those into place. And then going to move on to stencil number 4. Now this has the leaves on, so I'm going to add in the base of the leaves using the Marshland ink like we did before. Again, I'm using a mini blending tool, but you could use a larger one if you wanted to. Now it doesn't colour in all of the base of the leaves on this image here, so I'm just going to shift that over, and I'm just going to add in the little bud image and also the little leaf that we have at the top, again with the Marshland ink. Once the base of the leaf has been all added, I'm then going to shift that stencil over and add in the little details or shading spots using the other side of the stencil. And this time we will be using that Sea Forest ink to add in those darker spots. Once that's done, we can remove the stencil, and then we're going to move on to the last of the floral clusters. So I'm just going to pop in stencil number 5 onto the base of the flowers. And we are going to be using the Coral Bliss ink to add the ink through the stencil. Now I'm using a small blending tool, but again, you could use a larger one if you wanted to. Once that's done, we can move that stencil over slightly and then line up the center of the kind of base of the leaves or petals, sorry. And we're going to add in some of the Heartbeat ink to add in those darker spots. Again, using a mini blending tool, but again, use a larger one if you want to. Once that's done, we're going to move on to the 6th and the last stencil. Again, I'm just going to line up that little image of the flower just right at the top. This is the little singular one that we have. That one was using the Coral Bliss ink, and then I'm going to add in the shading for this one using the Heartbeat just to add in those darker spots there. We can then add in all of the little base of the leaves, the little buds, and also the flower centers. And we are going to be using the Marshland ink to add those into place. Once that's done, all we need to do then is just move that stencil over to add in the dark spots to the leaves, stems, and also the flower centers. And we will be using the Sea Forest ink to do that. Once that's done, we're just going to remove the stencil, and that is all of the layering complete. We really do hope this video helps. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again really, really soon. Bye-bye.